Okay, like I mentioned Friday, the Kennedy family is known worldwide. When you're having articles about the family in the 2015 People magazine, we just seem not to be able to forget them. But I want you to know how they even became a dynasty in themselves, by how they even got to this country. So the one person that was responsible for the Kennedy dynasty in America as we know it today was a guy by the name of Patrick Kennedy. Patrick Kennedy. Okay, he's the man responsible for the Kennedy dynasty in America. Patrick Kennedy. And what Patrick Kennedy did is he came to Boston, Massachusetts in 1849 when he was just 26 years old. Anybody want to guess where he came from? Ireland. Kennedys are Irish, so he came from Ireland. So, in 1849, Patrick Kennedy gets on the old boat to America, 26 years old, and he arrives in Boston, Massachusetts. Well, while he's there, getting settled, he meets a young lady by the name of Bridget Murphy. Actually, he met her on the ship and began to court her once they arrived in America. So Patrick meets a young lady by the name of Bridget Murphy. He meets her on the ship as they're coming to America. They court and later marry. And with the marriage of Patrick Kennedy and Bridget Murphy, the Kennedy dynasty as we know it in America and the world today began, with the marriage of these two individuals. Now, this gets a little confusing. They had several children, Patrick and Bridget. Probably one of the most famous child was Patrick Joseph Kennedy. So of all the children that Patrick Kennedy and Bridget Murphy had after their marriage, the one most notable was Patrick Joseph Kennedy. Now, Patrick Joseph Kennedy, son of Patrick and Bridget Murphy Kennedy, met and married a gal by the name of Mary Augustus Hickey. Okay, he married a gal by the name of Mary Augustus Hickey. Patrick Joseph Kennedy marries Mary Augustus Hickey. Okay? And they have several children. And the most important of their children is going to be a very familiar name, Joseph Patrick Kennedy. You can imagine what religion they are, can't you? They're Catholic. So, let's kind of make sure we're not messed up here. So, Patrick Kennedy comes over to Boston on the ship. He meets who on the ship on the way over, Alex? Bridget Murphy. They start a relationship. They're courting. He marries her. And one of their more famous siblings is Patrick Joseph Kennedy. Well, Patrick Joseph Kennedy grows up, and Emmy, who does he marry? Mary Augustus Hickey. And they have several children. The most famous of their children, Joseph Patrick Kennedy. Now, just to give you a heads up, Joseph Patrick Kennedy is John Kennedy's father. Okay, so we've gotten to that point. Okay? Now, I'll tell you a little bit about Joseph Patrick Kennedy. Interesting person. John Kennedy's father. Robert Kennedy's father. We'll talk about that. He was born in 1888 in East Boston. Joseph Patrick Kennedy was born in 1888 in East Boston. He attended high school and graduated from Harvard University. Very bright man. So he went to high school at Boston, East Boston, and eventually attended Harvard University and graduated. And he had a reputation as an incredibly fierce competitor. Very fierce competitor. So Joseph Patrick Kennedy was born in 1888 in East Boston. He grew up his childhood years, went to school, graduated from high school, attended Harvard University, and was known and had a tremendous reputation as a very fierce competitor. Well, he met a pretty young woman by the name of Rose Fitzgerald. And she was kind of considered the catch of all women in the Boston area. She was one everybody had their eyes on. So Joseph eventually met a pretty young woman by the name of Rose Fitzgerald, whom the area of Boston regarded as probably the best catch in the area for a young man. So he didn't set his sights on anything less than the best, and we'll talk about that. Now, Rose Fitzgerald's father was John Francis Fitzgerald, and he was significant because he was the mayor of Boston, Massachusetts. So Joseph Patrick Kennedy sets his eyes on Rose Fitzgerald, the catch of any women in Boston, and starts courting her. She just so happens to be the daughter of John Francis Fitzgerald, who was the mayor of Boston. Well, they court and they marry on October 7th, 1914. So the two court, Rose Fitzgerald and Joseph Patrick Kennedy court, and finally on October 7th, 1914, they marry. He's 26, she's 24. So they marry, Joseph and Rose marry on October 7th, 1914. He's 26, she's 24. At the time of their marriage, Joseph Kennedy was the bank president. He was just 26 years old. He was the youngest bank president in the world at the time, which tells you a little bit about him, that he was very ambitious. So he was a president of a bank at the age of 26, and he was the youngest bank president in the world at the time. Very ambitious fellow. So at the time of their marriage, Joseph was the bank president. He was 26, youngest in the world at the time. Now, if you know anything about the Kennedy family, they were very, very wealthy. And Joseph Patrick Kennedy was very wealthy. And he made his money throughout life in 5 areas. He made his money in 5 different ways to become a multi-millionaire. Just a quick note, John Kennedy donated his entire presidential salary to charity. Okay, that's how wealthy that family was. So, anyway, how do you think Joseph Kennedy made his money? 5 different ways he made money. He's a bank president, so he made money in the business world. Okay, he made money in the business world. How else would you make money? It takes money to make money. Okay, stock market, very good, thank you. You can even say that real loud, Emmy, so we get credit for being smart. Emmy said the stock market, that's true. He invested in the stock market and did very, very well. How else might you invest your money other than stock market? How might you invest your money? I got a friend of mine that was the principal at Laurel High School. He went overseas, and he's overseas, and he has set himself for retirement by doing something in Laurel as he's worked and made good money overseas as administrator. What has he purchased? Land. Close. Real estate. He purchased a ton of homes. He owns 11 homes in Laurel and rents them out and makes a ton of money. So Joseph Kennedy made money in real estate. Okay, he bought property and sold it. Made money in the real estate business. He also made money in the movie business. Now, you don't remember this, but maybe you've seen on TV the silent movies where the people act and they say something and the words come over the screen. That's what it was like in those days. And he made a lot of money in the movie business because the movie business was just starting up at this time, and he invested his money and it became very popular. But where did he make the majority of his money, Mary? Not very nice, but he did it. Where did he make a ton of money? Where do people make a... Where did he make a ton of money? Almost, he made a big majority of his wealth in this. Anybody know?
Bootlegging?
Yeah.
Bootlegging, selling illegal liquor during Prohibition. He was basically what we would consider a drug dealer today. He sold illegal alcohol and made a ton of money during that time. If you know anything about Prohibition in the 1920s, where it was illegal to consume alcohol, if you ever watched some of those old movies like The Untouchables, Joseph Kennedy made a ton of money in the liquor business when it was illegal. Okay? Do we need something repeated? Okay, so he made money in business, the stock market, real estate, the movie business, and the illegal liquor business. Thank you very much. Does it make him a bad guy? Not necessarily, made him very wealthy though. Now, he had a very strong philosophy for his family, which consisted of these three concepts. These are the things that Joseph Kennedy believed in, and this was his family's philosophy throughout the Kennedy dynasty. So Joseph Kennedy had three strong philosophies for the Kennedy family. This is what he believed in and pushed among his children. Number one, the world was a rough place for losers. That was incredibly pushed among the family. The world was a rough place for losers. Here's what Joseph Kennedy said. And I'll give you quotes from time to time, and you really don't need to write these down. You just need to listen, because I'm not going to question you on a quote. But this is what he said. He said, "It is not what you are that counts. It's what people think you are that is important." So he basically told his kids, the world's a rough place for losers. You're going to be somebody. Okay? Number two, his children were to be first in everything they attempted. You ever watch Talladega Nights or whatever? He says, if you're not first, you're last. Joseph Patrick Kennedy could have invented that point. That's the way he believed. His kids were going to be first in everything they attempted. Second place was finishing last, in his opinion. Okay? So his children were to be the first in everything they attempted. And the third was his family was to refrain from the show of emotion. If you showed emotion, you were a weak person. Strong people do not show emotion. And if you know much about the Kennedy family and all the tragedies they've gone through and all the funerals they've had, you never once see anyone showing emotion in the Kennedy family at a funeral. Because you just don't do that. So the family creed, in coming up to number three, the family creed for the Kennedy family was, Kennedys don't cry. So those were the three strong philosophies of Joseph Patrick Kennedy. One, the world was a rough place for losers. Two, his children were to be first in everything they attempted, and there was no showing of emotion. Number three, Kennedys don't cry. Very hardcore guy. Now, if you look, I gave you a handout, and I'm going to talk to you about all the siblings, the family of Joseph and Rose Kennedy. Interesting family. We're going to tell you about each one and what eventually happened to them, anything like that. And we'll go in the order of birth, oldest to youngest. So, the Kennedys were Roman Catholic, and they consisted of 9 children. I'm going to tell you about each of their children. Now, you'll kind of get used to this, but this is my wall of signatures. There's a lot of Kennedy family members on this wall, okay? And some that are not, you'll find out why. First one we want to talk about, the first child of Joseph and Rose Kennedy was Joseph Patrick Kennedy Jr. Joseph Patrick Kennedy Jr. Okay, he was born, it's important you know this, he was born on July 25th, 1915. He was born on July 25th, 1915. July 25th, 1915, and died on August 12th, 1944. August 12th, 1944. Do the math. How old was he when he died? 29. Okay? He attended private school during his upbringing in elementary and high school. He went to private schools. He also went to Harvard University and graduated in 1938. So Joseph Kennedy, Patrick Kennedy Jr. went to private schools throughout his educational years in elementary and high school, and then he also attended Harvard University, where he graduated in 1938. Well, then he went to Harvard Law School to become a lawyer. But this happened in the early 1940s, and what was going on in the early 1940s in America? World War II, and so he joined the Navy to become a pilot. during World War II. So he left law school at Harvard and joined the Navy, becoming a Navy flyer. He was killed in action when his airplane mysteriously blew up over the British Channel during World War II. So he was killed when his plane mysteriously, well, I shouldn't say mysteriously, it blew up during a mission over the British Channel. And what happened is he was flying a very dangerous mission where they were going to drop a ton of bombage on an enemy base. And it was one of those deals where, and I'm not making this up, and he volunteered to this, they were going to fly the airplane over the base, filled with explosives, and basically drop the plane and all into the enemy base, and he was to eject out before the bomb went off. Well, unfortunately for him, the trigger failed, and it blew up as he was flying the mission over the channel. So they never found his remains, obviously. So the first Kennedy tragedy was him dying at 29. He was awarded the Navy Cross after his death, and in 1946, an American destroyer was named the USS Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. in his honor. Okay, so he was awarded the Navy Cross for bravery, and in 1946, the United States Navy named a destroyer after him. It's called the USS Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. And it was basically launched as a final tribute for his heroic devotion to duty. He volunteered for that. He volunteered knowing the chances of him surviving that were not good. Now, he's not buried anywhere, but when you go to Arlington National Cemetery, he has a memorial stone right next to Ted Kennedy, who we'll talk about, which isn't too far from Robert, which isn't too far from John Kennedy. So you'll see his memorial stone when we go to Arlington. So that's Joseph Patrick Kennedy. That's his figure. Second born was John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Where did he get that Fitzgerald middle name?
It's his mother's maiden name.
His mother's maiden name. Very good. John Fitzgerald Kennedy is the second child. He was born on May 29th, 1917. Born on May 29th, 1917. And he died on November 22nd, 1963. So John Kennedy was born on May 29th, 1917. And he died on November 22nd, 1963. Do the math. He was 46. Now, we'll tell you more about this, but John Kennedy had a pretty successful political career. He served as a... Now, I should make sure you understand this. When you serve in Congress, you can either be one of two things. A member of the House of Representatives or a senator. Now, generally, well, not generally, but a person that's in the House is probably less prestigious than someone that's a senator. Okay? So the process of election, if you're going to build your way in politics, is you become a member of the House or a congressman or woman. Then you move up to the Senate, and then you might move up to the vice presidency or presidency or whatever. Well, John Kennedy served in both houses of Congress. He was a member of the House of Representatives and a senator representing the state of Massachusetts. So he served in both houses of Congress during his short career. We'll get way more into this later. And obviously you know that after serving in the House and the Senate, he was elected President of the United States in 1960 and was assassinated in Dallas, Texas while on a trip there in 1963. He's also buried in Arlington Cemetery with the Eternal Flame, and we'll tell you all about that whole thing later. So, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the second born of Joseph and Rose Kennedy. So, we've had first two siblings at untimely deaths. Okay, Rosemary Kennedy was the third born. Rosemary, she was born on September 13th, 1918. September 13th, 1918. And she died on January 7th, 2005. So Rosemary was born on September 13th, 1918 and died on January 7, 2005. She died at the age of 86, which makes you think she lived a wonderful, long, prosperous life, which is not true. Okay? So, she was born on September 13th, 1918, died on January 7th, 2005. She lived to the ripe age of 86. Now, this is kind of a sad story, and you can write down what you want. I don't think you have to write down everything I say, but you have to pick it up anyway. When she was in school, she had what we would consider today learning difficulties. And now if a kid has learning difficulties, you would sign them up and have them tested and placed in special education to help them with their career. Well, she did okay with those disabilities until 1940. And they worsened, and she got very, very moody and almost obnoxious, okay? She really had troubles with mood swings, and she had troubles learning, and just wasn't what Joseph Patrick Kennedy would say would be normal in any way, shape, or form. So, not knowing what to do in those days, when Joseph Kennedy asked for some advice, the advice he was given was to give Rosemary a lobotomy, and it would help her calm her violent mood swings. And so without telling his wife Rose, he had a lobotomy performed on Rosemary at the age of 23. Okay? So again, she had some learning difficulties, she had some mood swings, sometimes they were very violent, angry. Joseph Kennedy had a hard time handling that. He sought out advice. It was persuaded that a lobotomy would help her violent mood swings, and so he authorized the operation without letting his wife know. And Rosemary was just 23 years old. Well, the surgery left her permanently incapacitated. Okay, she couldn't even really care for herself. And because of that, she was sent to a place called St. Coletta's School for Exceptional